It is The Wave, 97.9 WHAV. And on the line with us is Congresswoman Lori Trahan. And Lori, good morning to you. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Lynn. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you here. And very timely because we know that you're asking to come on to talk about what's happening in Washington as far as funds go. President Donald Trump's plan to freeze some federal money for local and state assistance, and you've got a lot to say about it. Why don't you let me know what's on your mind?
Sure. Well, I want to be clear about what this is, right? It's a reckless, unprecedented power grab by Donald Trump. The consequences have already been swift and severe for the most vulnerable families in our country. I mean, I took so many phone calls yesterday. Our office did. Folks, including new moms who depend on food assistance to put dinner on the table for their children, immediately went into a panic about their ability to afford their groceries. I mean, parents who need rental assistance to keep a roof over their kids' heads began to worry about missing their monthly payment and facing eviction. Yesterday, state Medicaid agencies, including Mass Health, reported that they were unable to access the portal necessary to draw down funding to make sure the most vulnerable in our communities can continue to access their health care. And we heard the same with community health centers, Head Start, childcare facilities, and so many other programs. But, after an entire day of swift blowback by Democrats and immediate lawsuits, a federal court issued an injunction that temporarily halts the enforcement of Trump's directive until a hearing next Monday. So there is a temporary halt in place, but we're going to have to stay on this because I think what they've done is revealed the money that they're going to come after, which, by the way, represents $20 billion in the Massachusetts state budget. So we're going to be pushing back against those cuts.
So so some of these organizations or some of these agencies, they already cannot get some of the money that they were looking to get to pay bills and to hand out assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday, many of the screens went frozen. And we were alerted by, Head Start programs, by our community health centers, anybody who uses, Medicaid reimbursements to care for patients, which is all of our community hospitals. They started to call with, panic in their voices, SNAP benefits, rental assistance, home heating assistance. There's just too vast number of programs, but everyone was affected. So, Trump had to roll back that freeze because a federal judge ordered him to until the case is heard Monday morning. So I think there's a larger issue at play right now, and that is, the kind of cuts that the Trump administration is looking at. I mean, when I think of the city of Haverhill, they're, of course, concerned about federal firefighter and police officer hiring programs. They've been awarded SAFER grant programs on their merits. They were delivered $4.1 million to hire 16 new firefighters and permanently staff a ladder truck at the Bradford Fire Station. That money would, is at risk. The Community Action Inc., which is the community action agency, it undermines their ability to offer a number of services like home heating assistance, rental assistance, Head Start, so many programs that families rely on to make ends meet. Federal investments in Haverhill public schools to pay teachers. I mean, the list goes on. And so when we were fielding calls from all of the communities that we represent, because, it was just panic yesterday. But I think it sort of indicates where the fights will be in Washington. What programs will the Trump administration cut in order to help pave the way for these tax cuts for the wealthiest, right? He's talking about a corporate tax rate, bringing it down to 15%, tax breaks for his billionaire friends that he had on display Inauguration Day. And we have to make sure that we're elevating the hard work and the good work that these programs are doing for hardworking Americans. So, it gave me a pretty good preview of what I'm going to be working on and fighting for these next couple of years.
So what's going to be happening at that hearing that's going to be taking place on Monday?
Yeah, so the injunction that came down yesterday was a temporary halt to Trump's order to withhold taxpayer funding from programs, like I mentioned. We'll see what happens in the hearing that's set to take place on Monday, but what we know is that Donald Trump's attorneys will be in court on that morning arguing that his policy should be reinstated and allowed to continue moving forward. And look, they're fighting to essentially steal money that was allocated in law by Congress for federal programs that families depend on. And despite the blowback that they've seen over the last 36 hours, they're going to continue fighting to move forward with it. And so we'll look to see what the judge does there. We know we're on solid footing from a constitutional perspective. Article 1 of our Constitution gives Congress the right to fund programs. It's called the power of the purse. And the president doesn't have a constitutional authority to change that funding on a line-by-line basis or on a program-by-program basis. So they can't spend what hasn't been enacted, and they can't ignore spending laws that we've implemented. And so this, I think, it will be a fairly cut and dry case, but we'll see what happens on Monday.
Have you been paying attention to the attorneys general? There's 23 of them that have filed their own case as well.
Yes, absolutely. And thank heavens that they have, because there's been a number of executive orders that really upend, the rule of law, in our country. And we have states attorney generals who are on this. We have nonprofit groups that, benefit from these types of programs that have also filed litigation. And so I think one of the things that I've learned since being a member of Congress is you've got a lot of tools, right? You've got legislation, and, right now Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House. And so legislation is a little bit tougher to enact when you're in the minority, but you have litigation. And we work with our partners to make sure that we're pushing back on things that, defy the rule of law or are a threat to our Constitution. And certainly we've got the court of public opinion. I think yesterday was a perfect example. There was an uproar in communities across the country who rely on programs and federal funding to help families, help families make ends meet. And you saw the administration starting to roll back their rhetoric on these programs, and certainly the federal judge administer the stay. So I think this is sort of the fight that we're going to be in. And like I said, we're going to use every tool that we can to push back on these devastating policies.
So between now and Monday, you probably have a ton of meetings and people to talk to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the number of calls that we've received, folks like new moms who depend on food assistance to put dinner on the table for their kids or buy groceries, the parents who need rental assistance to keep a roof over their kids' heads. I know I'm going out to a lot of community action agencies and our community health centers. They want to be assured that federal funding won't be disrupted and they don't have to turn patients away. SNAP benefits, school lunches. I mean, there are so many kids who rely on school lunches so that they can, be well fed and healthy so that they can learn in school. Small businesses rely on applications and small business administration support. Certainly Medicaid is the big one. 1.7 million people in Massachusetts, many of whom either live at or below the poverty line, but others who are disabled or have disabled children. I mean, so many of our seniors use Medicaid for their nursing home or long-term care stays. I mean, Medicaid is not a program that we can see cuts to, especially when we consider how fragile the hospital infrastructure is in our state after Steward ripped off patients and left town. So, these are really important programs that folks rely on. We're going to be meeting with those families who are impacted and those organizations that deliver those services to discuss the path forward.
All right, one more question, then I'll let you get on to the next meeting. So when So if that judge hadn't issued that injunction on yesterday, then the money started to get cut off, and then it started to open up again after the injunction was issued. Is that right?
Yeah, and even that, it wasn't immediate. I mean, I have to say, technology can be fickle, and there were a lot of glitches. So even after the injunction yesterday, there were many, organizations like our healthcare centers and our Head Start programs, childcare centers, that couldn't access the portal to pay their caretakers or to pay their providers or to get a Medicaid reimbursement. And so, this is a enormous scale we're talking about when you just shut off funding, even if it's a temporary freeze, which they were trying to portray this as. It still disrupted the entire day yesterday. And, that's why this court case on Monday is going to be so important, but also the fight ahead, because we know where they're trying to cut programs. They just gave us their playbook. These are the programs that they're coming after. They cite that they want to review these programs, but they're really looking to make drastic cuts to the tune of $3 trillion federally to programs that people rely on. And so we have to make sure that we stop them in their tracks and we elevate the voices of people who rely on them.
All right. Well, Lori, I want to thank you for joining me and sharing your thoughts and on what's going on. It's very important, and I'm glad that you were able to get on to talk about that today.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. Congresswoman Lori Trahan, our guest this morning, right here on the WHAV 97.9 WHAV.
Wake up with Wynn Damon weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on 97.9 FM WHAV.
Catch the wave, WHAV.